All right, you guys, as you can see by the thumbnail, I'm back with another one like the other one. Check it out, you guys. Let me get this out the way real quick. I know a lot of you been tapping in and you've been asking about the Salinas Valley video. Trust me, I've been trying to get it out since yesterday. But for whatever reason, YouTube is tripping. They flagged the video. I don't know what it is. There's nothing outwardly that I can see in the video that's flagging it. I had Sandman even go in and delete and blur a lot of the pictures in there, and nothing's happening. They're not moving on it. You know what it is a lot of the times when we put these videos up, there's a machine, or the computer, not a machine. The computer does the check on the video, and something will flag the video. It could be a word, it could be a picture, it could be nothing. Maybe that computer's just having a bad day. So something will flag the video and it'll stay yellow. But what ends up happening is they'll have somebody come in and do a manual check, you know, a real person, and they'll come in, they'll look at the video and they'll be like, you know what, this is in compliance with our, you know, our community guidelines and all that. The computer just flagged it for no reason. You're good to go. So I'm hoping that it doesn't take 3, 4, 5 days for that to happen. Sometimes YouTube, they move like molasses. You know what I mean? We'll see what happens. I'm hoping that it will be green by the time some of you are hitting that early morning Friday commute. I know a lot of you guys like to get that, you know, that early video in the morning when you're on the freeway headed to work, or when you're doing your thing at work. So let's hope it clears. If not, don't trip. I got you covered. I'm gonna go ahead and drop the next Mexican Mafia video right now. So this video right here is about somebody I've talked about in the past, Chavo from Bakersfield. Rest in peace to that brother. It doesn't matter how he lived his life, what he was involved in, or who he was. He was still a human being. Matter of fact, the other guy that he was out there with, he also passed away. And that's Alfie from Happy Valley. Alfie passed away as well. So rest in peace to that brother. And again, it doesn't matter. You know, they're still human beings at the end of the day. So anyways, this story right here, it took place at around the same time, one of the last stories that I told you guys about. I want to say it involved Smiley from 18th Street, Little Cycles or something, that Columbia Little Cycles. It involved him and the tattoo that he got, that eye buster. Chavo, he sees the tattoo, and from there everything kind of unfolds, and it's a cold story. Anyways, this one right here got a cold twist to it too. You guys, I think some of you guys might like it. We'll see. Anyway, so again, this video, it took place at around the same time also that I always say in my videos, when everybody got out of the SHOE program. Everybody's getting out, they're just hitting the yards, different prisons. And you know, like the way it was described to me, I've said this in the past, it was like everybody was out there kind of lost. When everybody got out, these new guys are all showing up. You got these youngsters like mesmerized. Look, these are the carnales right here, and they're coming out. These guys, big old whips. They've been, you know, locked up in the SHOE program for 20, 30 years. Some of these guys are like, they're white like chalk. They ain't got no color. They look sick. No, but seriously, so some of these guys are, you know, they're coming out of the SHOE, and a lot of them are leaders, and these are guys that they've heard about. So these guys get out, and I'm sure that the yard was probably already established, you know, to an extent. Well, it had to be. It was established to an extent. You got Sureños out there, and they were running things the way they wanted it ran. But now you got a new sheriff in town. Chavo's out there, and, you know, he wants to put his stamp on it. But again, the way that it was described to me was like, they get out, and it was almost like they did a re-screening process to everybody on the yard. They start pulling paperwork. Who are you? What are you involved in? Who's leadership out here? Who's doing what? So they do a cleansing process. They make sure that there's nobody out there on the yard that's slipping through the cracks or got any kind of foul paperwork on them, or anybody that's just, you know, a sleeper, or not a sleeper, but somebody that's, you know, got skeletons in their closet. So anyways, after they do that and they start establishing their circles, their leadership, they start, you know, getting their entourages together, delegating positions. So after all that good stuff, you know, I'm sure they already had dope coming in through the visiting room. Dope's always going to come in through the visiting room. But these routes are established. They find out who got the cell phones, who's getting the cell phones in, and all that. So this was happening at around that same time. Now, the other thing that I don't think I've said this before about Chavo, but even though me and Chavo were around the same age, I never ran into him in the Bay or in Corcoran. All the years that I was stuck back there in the shoot program, I never ran into him. Although I did hear about him. I heard his name. The same way that, they study who the Norteños are in their pods or in their sections or in their blocks, who's NF, who's NR, who's just a Norteño, who's part of the leadership. The same way they study us, we study them. I want to say I just heard his name, in passing or like on a roster or something. And one of the things that would have stood out about him is that he was from Bakersfield. There's not too many active Mexican Mafia members from Bakersfield. There's not too many NF members still from Bakersfield. I don't even think there's one, but that probably stood out, by itself. Anyways, what I basically heard about him and through, my boy that's telling me these stories is that he was a stand-up type of individual. He's somebody that, he was considered a senior member, somebody that had been around, and he was always part of leadership. So even though Alfie is out there with Chavo at this time, make no mistake about it, this is Chavo's yard. I don't know about the Mexican Mafia's ranking process. I don't know how they do it. I've never heard about it. Like the NF has a ranking system. That's the category system, 1, 2, and 3. And that's how they're ranked, by their history and the personal achievements, the things that they've done throughout time. I don't know how the Mexican Mafia does it. If it's just time and things that cut. Ready? 1, 2, 3. I don't know if it's just time or if it's, they got some kind of system in store. I don't know. But anyway, so they're out there together and Chavo has the last say on the yard, although Alfie is helping him get things established out there. Now, Alfie, he's somebody that, that I know personally. I ran into Alfie in the Bay. I want to say it was either C6, C11, or C5. I can't remember, but I know it was on the C side. Alfie is somebody that, I've always said this about him in the past whenever I've talked about him, is that he kind of reminds me of like the Joe Pesci of the Mexican Mafia. He's a small, short guy in stature, but he's a rambunctious type of individual. He's got a menacing stare, and he can be an intimidating little guy, probably, within his people, because he's a leader and he has a history of being a killer. Everybody knows, Alfie's history and the things that he was involved in. So anyways, I know Alfie from being up in the Bay. I want to say he was up there with Fox Tapia at the time. I want to say Fox was his celly. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was. The other thing I'll say about Alfie is he reminds me of a lot of the older NF members that I ran into in the past up in the Bay. Guys that had been in leadership positions, or they were used to being leaders at one point in time. And then when they end up getting around another C, somebody that might have had status over them, they don't like it. They don't like taking direction from somebody else. They're, a lot of the older guys, they're real set in their ways, deeply set in their ways. So I remember seeing it play out with the last celly I had up in Pelican Bay, Big Rock from Salinas. We all ended up getting moved from C11 to C2. We get over there and Stork is the regimental commander for C2. So now Rock has to take direction from Stork, and he didn't like that. It's almost like Rock he got used to being in a leadership position. I don't know how long he was the UC in C11, but it had been for an extended period of time. And now, he's over there with Stork, and now he's got to take, direction and orders from Stork. And Rock didn't like that. At the end of the day, he ended up getting in line where he was supposed to be, and he conformed with the program like the rest of us. But, it's all ego-based. Somebody gets in a position, they're used to being a leader, and, they don't know how to, adapt to somebody else being in a leadership position above them. But like I said, it's all ego. But, that's what I knew about Alfie. And if you guys have ever seen that picture of Charles Manson, where, you know, I say menacing look because there's a picture of him when he's mean mugging the camera. He has that look. There's a picture of Alfie that looks dead on that picture. You know, you could take those pictures and put them side by side and you would think that they were brothers. So they're out there on the yard and they're trying to get everything established the way that they want it. And, you know, I'm sure that there was Glavo coming in through the visiting room and they had cell phones coming in. But even though you got routes out there that are established and you got things coming in, it's a continuous process. We were always trying to look for ways, trying to find ways to get dope in. That's something that's never ending. It's always happening. It can never be enough. So, you know, Chavo gets out there and he's looking for new routes. And they had, like I said, they had dope coming in. So trying to figure out new ways to get Glavo in, to get dope in, cell phones. It's a continuous process, especially for a criminal organization like the Mexican Mafia, the NF, the Aryan Brotherhood, the BGF. These organizations are always going to continue to keep trying to find new ways to try to manipulate, you know, COs, to try to find just different ways, different methods of bringing it in. So obviously there's two underlying reasons why, you know, they're always continuing to try to get dope in on the yard. One of the obvious reasons is for personal consumption. People like to get high. There's always dope out there on the yard. I mean, you got guys out there smoking banana pills, crunching up their pills, snorting aspirin, anything that they can do to get themselves loaded or to get a head change. So, you know, that's one reason. So if you got dope coming in, dope equals money, money equals power. And, you know, these organizations, these criminal organizations, they're always trying to establish the yards. And bringing in dope is a big part of it. That's where the money's at. So personal consumption, and also so that they can become self-supportive, self-sustaining. You know, I've said this before, but a lot of the times, you know, when you go to prison and you have an old lady, if you're fortunate enough to have a wife or a girlfriend, she might stick around with you for a couple of years. If she's a thoroughbred, she might stay with you 10, 15 years, maybe 20. But at some point, she's going to miss that physical relationship and she's going to decide, you know what, this isn't for me anymore. So, you know, these things happen. They happen all the time. And if you're down, you're doing a life term or something, you got an L, and you've been down 15, 20 years, people start dying off. Your personal family, they're always going to be there for you. They're always going to, you know, send you money. They're there for the long haul. But, you know, after a while, people start dying off, or, you know, people go through their struggles. What I'm trying to say is when, you know, you're no longer able to take care of yourself with those personal resources that you might have, girlfriend, a wife, family. You know, that's why these criminal organizations are generating money so that they can take care of their own. They can start, you know, generating money, making profit so that they can buy packages, so that they can buy, you know, whatever they need, sweats, canteen, TVs, radios. That's the reason why everybody's out there selling dope, or they're trying to get dope out there on the yard. It's money. But anyways, like I said, you know, always trying to figure out new ways to get dope in is something that it's just a constant process. You know, you're locked in somewhere and you're trying to figure out, how can I get it in? Can I get it in through the mail? Can I get it in? You're out there brainstorming in the visiting room. You see lapses in security, or, you know, there's just different ways. Manipulating staff, coming in through the visiting, family visits. There's just, you're out there always trying to think of new ways. The visiting room is always going to be a pipeline for getting dope in. That's been in play forever. But there's drawbacks that come with, you know, getting it in through the visiting room, because you can only get in so much dope, so much Glavo through the visiting room, and you can't get in any cell phones. At least, well, you see there should be a picture of a cell phone that's popping up right now on the screen. You might be able to get that one in right there, but, you know, on the real though, getting it in through the visiting room, there's limitations there. You're not going to be able to get in a lot. And these criminal organizations, they don't want 1 ounce, 2 ounce, 3 ounce. They want 20, 30 ounces, kilos. They want as much as they can get. So, you know, if all else fails that's always going to be a for sure, a for sure shot through visiting. But there's other ways. The COs and the free staff or the civilians, they're always targets. This is a cat and mouse game that's always being played out there on the yard. These guys go through training and they're always told that, look, these inmates, they're always trying to manipulate you. They're going to try to get something from you. So they go through all this training to the point that some of these guys don't even want to give you a bar of soap. They think, no, you're trying to manipulate me, man. You know what I mean? No, you already got your bar of soap this weekend. You're just trying to get over. But they go through this training, to so that they prevent these guys from falling victim to some savvy individuals that can manipulate them. But it's a cat and mouse game. It doesn't always work. They can go through 1,000 classes or get as much training as they want to give them. But a lot of the times they're either going to get wrapped up in it because they make a conscious decision to do it, or they're not. It's as simple as that. Falling behind on mortgage payments, car notes, trying to put your kids through school, falling behind on just regular bills. That's really all it takes. When someone accumulates a lot of debt like that, they're trying to figure out how to get out of debt. Should I take out a personal loan? Should I do this? Should I sell my car? When they get into a situation like that, that's when they're more susceptible to crossing those lines. As time has went on, the one thing I've noticed is that it's become a lot more lucrative too to get involved in that game for COs. I'm talking about COs or other staff civilians that work in the prisons or the county jails. As time goes on, it's a more lucrative thing to get into because cell phones, that's where all the money's at. Getting in heroin, crystal, tobacco, lighters, and all that good stuff, that's always been a money maker. But cell phones changed the game. So anyways, according to my boy, Chavo had several different sureños bringing in clavo through the visiting room. They were bringing it in, it's coming in, but it's, they're not really, they don't really got the yards sold up at that time. It's coming in and they're making money. They got a plug on some cell phones, but, they don't really open it up yet. So according to my boy, Chavo got like 7 or 8 different sureños that are bringing in dope through the visiting room. They're bringing it in, but again, these are small amounts. They can only get so much in, and they're making their money. They're making some profits out there on the yard. They got a cell phone plug, and they're doing their thing out there. But they're still looking for other ways of bringing in the big bag. And like I said, you can get clavo in through the visiting room, but cell phones is because cell phones are where the money's at. The only way you're going to really be able to lock it down and get cell phones in is through manipulating a CO, getting somebody to cross that line, or, convincing one of them to get on the payroll. Somebody that might have financial problems, somebody that might just be like, you know what, I want to make some bread. Somebody that might have established a relationship with somebody out there and there's a level of trust, and that's how it happens. So there was a sureño apparently that was working in the kitchen, and this guy had been around. He was somebody that was part of Chavo's inner circle, and he was in there working on, there was a cook, one of the main cooks that was a civilian. He was working on that guy, and he was working on a CO, both of them that were working in the kitchen. Both of these guys, the CO worked in the kitchen area, and obviously the civilian cook worked in the kitchen. And, at some point he felt comfortable enough with this civilian cook to proposition him. Hey man, you want to make some bread, some little bit of extra cash. We're trying to get in a little bit of dope, some cell phones. So he propositions this guy. He probably felt comfortable enough. To get at him once they had been back there working together for a while. So, he feels like, if anything, this dude ain't going to tell on him for propositioning him. He'll just say no because, they at least have that much of a relationship. The guy's not going to burn him, but he's either going to be like, nah, man, I'm cool. I'm not going to fuck with that. Or, you know what? Tell me a little bit more about it. So when he propositions this guy, at first he's like, you know what? Nah, man, I'm not trying to lose my job over no crazy shit like that. I hear about people getting caught up all the time. He's like, Good looking out. I appreciate it, man. But I'm good. So, this guy, obviously he'd been around for a while. The Sureño, he was a savvy individual, had a mouthpiece on him. Obviously, he wasn't no dumb. He was somebody that, he knew how the game worked. He probably manipulated other CEOs in the past. And it's a game, man. It's a game that you learn how to play that game. You establish some type of mutual ground with these individuals. You get in their head. You start to build, a mutual feeling of trust between you and this individual. And next thing you know, you might be like, hey man, here's my lady, these are my kids right here, and you guys are talking about the streets and shit that happens out there, or you're talking sports, talking about the Niners, not the Raiders, the Niners. And over time they forge relationships with people just like anybody else. So you got guys that are always trying to target CEOs, females or males, but that's how it starts. It just, when you're around somebody day in and day out, you're working in the same area, they come to work, you come to work, you guys are kicking it. Eventually those doors start opening up, and before you know it, there's trust, and then boom, you got them. So I'm sure that's how it started for this guy. So like I said, this Sureño was considered to be a primo. So remember, those of you that don't know what a primo is like a camarada. He's somebody that has been around. They're trusted. They've been entrusted to work under a specific emero, like Chavo. He's got his own primos. These guys have been designated to work in their crew. So this Sureño was one of Chavo's primos, and he was part of his inner circle. So according to my boy, only a few Sureños on that yard, probably Chavo's inner circle, knew about this plug that they were trying to work on, because they were trying to keep it close to the hip. And only those that needed to know, on a need to know basis, knew about the plug that they were trying to establish in the kitchen. Because obviously the wrong individual ends up hearing about it. Next thing you know, there goes that good thing. So only a few people knew about it, and the way that my boy ended up finding out about it is because he was celled up with somebody that was part of Chavo's inner circle. So being in the cell with this guy, that's how he ended up finding out about everything that went down from beginning to end. So anyway, like I said, after the Sureño ends up getting at this cook, and at first the cook was like, nah, man, I'm good. I'm not trying to lose my job. However long it was, a day or two, a couple days later, the cook comes back, and they're in the kitchen, they're in there stirring up those big pots of frijoles, and they got arroz going, you know what I'm saying, enchiladas, todo. So anyways, they're in there, and I guess the cook ends up bringing that back up. He's like, hey, remember what you got at me about the other day? He's like, tell me a little bit more about that package you were talking about getting in. It's like, what are you talking about? What kind of numbers you talking about? So, he starts reeling them in. He's like, look, all you got to do is bring in, a couple ounces. I got a couple ounces, some crystal, some cell phones, and it'll be good. Wrap it up. I have my people meet you out there. You can, I have them come wherever you want them to go. I have them come straight to you. You won't have to go out your way, do none of that. And it'll be good. You'll get paid out there up front before you have to do anything. So, the cook, he's listening to this, and he's like, nah, man. He's like, I ain't fucking with no dope. I'm not bringing in no dope. I'm not getting caught up in that. No crystal, no heroin, none of that. He goes, I'll bring in cell phones. I'll do cell phones, but I'm not going to bring in no clavos. So, I'm sure the Sureño was like, hey, it's all good, man. It's all good. Don't trip. So, they work out the numbers. He tells the cook, he's like, look, you bring in 5 cell phones, we'll give you 10 bands, $10,000. To, somebody like that, that's a lot of money. But I'm sure he doesn't know how much money is on the yard, like how much these cell phones go for. He's thinking, damn, $10,000, when a cell phone out there on the street goes for $100, $200, hell yeah, I'll bring you 5 cell phones for $10,000. You serious? So anyways, I'm sure this Sureño goes back and he tells Chavo, hey, this dude is, he doesn't want to mess with no clavo, no crystal, no black. He's willing to bring in some cell phones. But check it out, though. I told him that I'd have my people meet him somewhere out there and that they would give him a package that's wrapped up and ready to go. 5 cell phones. He don't got to do nothing. He don't got to go buy the cell phones. Everything's already going to be packaged up and ready to go. All he's got to do is bring it in. And he was cool with that. So let's run this for, 2, maybe 3 times. Just get the cell phones in, and then we can just start packing it out with Glavo. So that was their plan. I'm sure it was. And that's what they did. So again, they arranged it so that this cook, all he had to do was meet somebody out there on the streets, and they came to him. They dropped off the 10 bands, cash, and they gave him the package. And I'm sure, it was mentioned like, hey, man, don't pop that open. Those are, the cell phones are from my people, and they're going to certain people and they're already spoken for. So there's no need for you to open it up. And this dude, unless he was just real stupid, maybe he had a feeling, because he had to have known that a package comes to him sealed up and it stays sealed up. There's got to be dope in there. But, maybe he thought, man, they're not going to play me like that. I let them know straight up that I wasn't messing with no dope. But either way, that's how they arranged it. And the cook was good with it. And the other thing about it that he liked was he got paid up front. They gave him the $10,000 as soon as they handed him the cell phones. So he got the money before he even had to bring that shit into the prison. So after 2 or 3 runs, they decide, you know what, it's time. Let's go ahead and pack it out. They get a couple of ounces of some black. They get a couple of ounces of some crystal, and they load it up, right? They probably throw in some outfits and whatever else, throwing a little chingadera, you know what I'm saying? So anyways, they load it up, and boom, this cat, he's making his 10 grand, and this cat's got the fever now. Now they got his nose wide open. He's making money. This boy's paying off all his credit card debt. He's got new rims on his Jeep, the kind that spin, that keep on spinning after the car stopped. So anyways, he's balling now. He's making money, and everything's going smooth. So they're running it. Everything's going smooth. But like it always happens, the more you feed that mouth, the hungrier it gets. So now 5 cell phones isn't enough. Now Chavo wants 10 cell phones, 15 cell phones, 20 cell phones. It's a hungry. So I'm sure the Sureño, he's got to get it at the cook, and he's telling them, he's like, look, man, check it out. 5 cell phones is cool, but it's not enough, man. We need to start bringing in more, 15, 20. But at the same time, they're getting more cell phones. This guy's getting paid more too. So instead of bringing in 5 cell phones and making 10 bands, he's bringing in 10 cell phones and making 20 bands. So the more cell phones he brings in, the more money he's making. So he's like, I'll run 20, let's do it. So what they didn't know at the time, they ended up finding out later, what the cook did was, he was a smart individual. I guess, him working there, he had relationships with all the drivers that used to come in and drop shit to make their deliveries, the guys that came in and would restock whatever they were dropping off. He had relationships with a lot of the truck drivers. Well, he worked it out with the truck driver to start bringing in the package, because the package started getting too big. Maybe, he didn't want to take a chance of walking through, because I know in a lot of prisons that when the COs, when they walk in the morning, sometimes they'll do random searches on them. They'll have a dog waiting, and instead of just walking straight through like they normally do, they'll wand them down, and they'll be like, hey, this is a random search, and bam, that's how some of them end up getting busted. But, either way, he's bringing it in, maybe in a duffel bag or in his jacket or something. And it's cool. It was cool when there was just 5 cell phones, but now that there's 15, 20 of them, now he's got to find a better way to bring it in. So that's what he does. He gets at one of the drivers, and he tells the driver, look, whatever he worked out with the driver, he convinces the driver to start bringing it in. And it comes in with the food. This guy brings in all these pallets of food, and only the cook knows where it's at on the crates, the pallets of food. So I guess what this civilian cook was doing is he'd end up getting the package, And then at some point, he would get a hold of the driver that was going to make the delivery on, their scheduled days. So they make the arrangements to where this guy's bringing in the package and it gets there and everybody's happy. So when it comes in on a pallet, and the civilian cook is the only one that knows where it's at, obviously. It's always in the spot where he can find it. They got that all worked out. So it's all good. It comes in, it's coming in like that. And, I don't know how many times it happened. I'm not going to lie to you guys and say it happened 3, 4, 5 times, or maybe it was happening for 5 months. I don't know. It could have happened 3 times, 4 times. But, it's coming in. But keep in mind, there's other cooks and, other inmate cooks that are in the kitchen working in there as well. It's not just the civilian cook and the sureño. You got bakers that are working in there. You got other line cooks that are in there. And there's other civilian cooks that are working back there as well. So they got to be careful and kind of be discreet when, they're doing their business back there. But there's other people back there. So everything's going smooth. Everything's, coming in the way it's supposed to be. But when one of the shipments comes in, the unthinkable happens. There's another cook, an Africano cook, that's working back there in the kitchen as well. And, whether this guy just got nosy or, he just decided to steal something out of one of the pallets, he just so happened to go into the pallet that had the clavo in it. He gets the package. He finds the package and he starts looking at it. And I don't know if he opened it, but the fuck is this? So luckily he didn't end up keeping it. But what he did do is he goes and he tells the civilian cook, which was his boss. He's like, hey, I don't know what this is, but this was on one of the pallets. So he hands it to him and he probably freaked out. I can just imagine what kind of look he probably had on his face. He's probably 1,000 things are going through his mind when he hands him that. And he's like, where'd you get this at? He's like, on one of the pallets. I don't know what it is, but here, I'm giving it to you. So boom, as soon as that happens, that cook's like, you know what, I'm done. I'm cool. This right here is getting too crazy now. That was too close. He's worried about the Africano telling somebody else. And, he don't know if that's the end of it, but he's ready to stop at that point. The package still ends up getting delivered. But when the sureño finds out what's happening, he's like, man, he probably try to play it down like, man, everything's going to be good. Don't trip. But the cook tells him, look, that's the last one, man. I'm cool. I'm not trying to lose my job. I got a family. I like my job. But he's like, this right here is like, that's too close for comfort right there, man. He's like, so let's just shut everything down. And hey, it was good while it lasted. You guys got your shit. I made some money. And he was trying to back out. But, the sureño, he goes back and he tells Chavo what happens. Chavo's livid. He gets pissed off. Who the fuck is that Africano? Who the fuck is he? You can just imagine how upset he probably got. That right there is interfering with a major pipeline. They were making a lot of money. And this guy's talking about shutting it down. Just imagine all the monster habits that some of those guys probably, they got, because all this dope's coming in. They don't got a monkey on their back. They got a whole pack of gorillas. They're probably like, man, hell no. This fool stops bringing in dope. Now we're going to be in trouble, like serious trouble. Hey, he cannot stop. You need to go back in there, talk to him, tell him whatever you need to tell him in order to convince him to keep this shit going, man, because we can't lose this dude. Seriously. So, the sureño, he ends up going back and he tries to talk to the cook and he's like, look, man, we got to keep this going, and I'll sweeten it up for you, add a couple thousand, a couple more thousand or whatever, but let's not let this affect our business, man. Everything's been going good. We're making money and we can't just shut it down like that. But this guy was dead set on not doing it no more. But this guy's scared. The whole thing about this guy coming up and handing him that package, him knowing that he knows about it now, he doesn't know what this guy's thinking. He could get set up, or he might have told somebody else. He's spooked. He's like, no, man. But what it all came down to is, at the end of the day, is as long as that Africano was working in there, it was a no-go. He wasn't messing with it. So what do you guys think happened? I'm sure the Africano's got to go. He's got to go. he's in the way. There's too much money coming in. There's too many. These, like I said, these guys, they were probably freaking out themselves. Chavo and his boys, they all got these crazy ass habits. And now somebody's talking about turning their water off. Oh, hell no. There ain't no methadone clinic up in here, man. You know what I mean? When we kick this one, it's gonna be bad. So, again, Chavo probably was like, man, whatever you got to do, sweeten the deal up. So Chavo comes up with a plan to get the Africano out of the kitchen, but not only out of the kitchen, he comes up with a plan to get him off the entire yard. So, here's a good example of what happens when somebody gets in the way of the bag. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what group you're involved in. When somebody gets in the way of something like this, thousands and thousands of dollars, I'm sure they would have did whatever they would have had to do to that dude, to get him off the yard, to murk him, do whatever they had to do. But, they come up with this plan to get him off the yard. And what ends up happening is this guy's from Southern California. The Africano's from Southern California. He's not a banger though. He's not a Crip. He's not a Blood. He's just somebody that's from SoCal, and he's a different kind of individual. Some cats look at him like he's a weirdo. He's one of them odd characters that kind of stay to themselves, and he's just one of those type of dudes. So they get at this Africano that they know. I don't know if he was a Blood or a Crip, but he was somebody from down south that they had somewhat of a good rapport with. And they tell him, they're like, hey, man, check this out. This guy right here is, he's interfering with our business. He ended up finding one of our packages, and this fool gave it, to the administration, gave it to the CO. He doesn't tell him he gave it to the cook or none of that. That's not necessary. He just basically lets them know this guy turned a package over, cell phones and some dope, and it got intercepted. So they tell him, they're like, hey man, this dude, he's got to go. You guys either get him off the yard or we're going to get him off the yard. And if we have to do it, we're going to demand that we get reimbursed for the 10 cell phones that we lost as well. So they get at him, whatever said, whatever. So a day or two later, however long it took, they end up sending 3 Africanos in the cell on this guy. They go in there, they stomp him out. Oh, shoot. Anyway, so they stomp this dude out. They mollywop this cat. They mop the floor with him. They throw him up under the bunk. He touches shit up in that cell he didn't even know existed. So, they whoop him. And so they end up getting this dude off the yard, but it all ended up being for nothing, because the following week, when they had everything set up again for this cook to bring in the next shipment, because they got at him, after the Africano was gone, he was like, okay, cool. that dude's gone. I don't have to worry about that no more. Play ball. Let's run it. So, they thought that everything was cool. They thought that, he was good to go again. They set everything up, but the dude doesn't pick up the package. He doesn't go to the spot where he's supposed to meet their people. He's a no-show. So now they're tripping out. The dude doesn't come back to work. He doesn't come back to that yard. They're trying to figure out what happened. According to my boy, the following week, they ended up getting word that he ended up getting transferred out to another prison. He didn't go to another yard. He got transferred out to another prison. And whether or not this had anything to do with him going to the administration and requesting to get moved out, because maybe he told him that he moved somewhere and that he needed to get to a prison that was closer to where he was now living or something like that, or it had something to do with the Africano. They never really found out, but there was some speculation that the Africano, when he went to the hole, that he ended up going to the administration telling them that, look, the reason I got beat up out there on the yard was because I found a package, and people ended up getting pissed off, and that's what happened. I don't know. I'd be lying if I told you I knew. But anyways, that just goes to show you what happens when somebody ends up getting in the way of something like that. That right there, technically, they would have took that dude out if they would have had to. When that much money is exchanging hands, they got a plug like that, and they're literally giving up $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, and they got all this dope coming in, and you got some idiot that stumbles across somebody else's squabble, and then he gives it, you know, to the cook like he did, that right there could have got him in some serious trouble. Luckily, he didn't give it to a CO, and you know the cook was in on it, which he didn't know. He thought he was turning it into, you know, his boss that would turn it into the administration. But that just goes to show you, man, how again how much, you know, they're focusing on just global out there. And this was a short-lived, it was a short-lived plug that they had out there, but it was, you know, I'm sure it was all the way live for a brief period of time. They had that much dope coming in. They got all these cell phones. They made a lot of money, you know what I mean? But I wonder where that cook's at today. I wonder if he's still floating around in the prison system somewhere. But anyways, I know this was a quick one. You know, it was a little different from some of the other ones, but it was a crazy plot. It could have happened a lot different. That Africano got lucky. You know, there was a lot of different scenarios that could have played out all bad for him. Again, when somebody stands in the way of that much money, it could have been all bad for him. But that's another example too of how, you know, that game is, it's a lucrative business. And that happens a lot more than a lot of people might think. Anyways, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and cut this one short. I hope by the morning that other video will be clear. We'll see what happens. I'm going to keep checking it. And as soon as it clears, I'll release it. I'll try to get on the Inner Demons tomorrow. I got another Mexican Mafia story for you guys already on deck. So I'm going to get that out. If not tomorrow, I get it out the next day. Remember, we got that Vlad coming up too. And again, just to let some of you know, those of you that have been tapping into the Cash App, putting in your tickets, I've been getting them. So you're good to go. Those of you that want to get into the raffle, we're doing 3 pairs of Jordans. If not this Saturday, next Saturday. So get in the raffle while you can. We're doing 3 pairs of Jordans, and we're also giving out some shirts, and we'll probably be giving out some other stuff as well. Anyways, with that being said, this is your boy B, and I'm out.